Let's do this. Okay, so Ginger Beyond the Crystal is a 3D platformer inspired by the N64 era platformers, like Banjo-Kazooie and the likes. So we have one base form of movement, and that is the dash, and that just lets us go places quicker than just our base run. We also have a double jump, so the movement's a bit simplistic, but we don't need it to be super complex at all times in order for it to be fast, which is nice. It is pretty tiring on your fingers though, because you just have to mash the dash button the whole run. You get 9 different costumes with 9 different power-ups, 8 of which you use throughout the run frequently. So you see, our main objective here is to purify these power crystals. And these unlock certain levels and contribute to our progress overall as a game. So right here we have the first world, Loline Town even, and there are 30 levels in each world, and you're required to do 15 of them. In this particular world we do 17 because they make you do a tutorial for a special kind of level that isn't normally required, and then another one because it's required for our gem count, which you can see on the upper right. We use these gems in order to save villagers. It takes 30 to save a villager. So throughout the run we'll be collecting as many gems as possible. There's also a building aspect, which is why some of these houses are colored and some are completely uncolored. We have to color up as many houses and rescue as many villagers as it takes to reach 70% on the percent counter, which unlocks the 5th level in each world. Each level is tailored to Ginger's power that they have at the time. There's also a lot of out-of-bounds tricks in this game. So right away you'll see me specifically going for gems and materials. And by getting a lot of stuff now, it may seem to be out of the way, saves a lot of time later. These little blue boys are checkpoints, and when we pause, we have the ability to choose to respawn, and that's going to come into play a lot. We want to wait here just to be safe. So, here we have our first companion that we rescue, and that gives us our first outfit, which is the, I guess it's a ukulele, or maybe a banjo. What this lets us do is play music on music spaces, and I think in 3 cases in the run or so, it's required to progress. And other than that, you can use it throughout the world to get materials and stuff, but we don't use that in the route because playing music is a bit slow. I didn't do it there, but there's actually, so we're doing our first death warp of the run. So what you didn't see is during certain cutscenes we actually have control of Ginger, which means that obviously we can move while we can't see Ginger, which saves a few seconds throughout the run if done properly. So here's the first example of a music slot. So basically you press numbers 1 through 4 as fast as possible in a pattern, and it unlocks things for you. It's like the Wind Waker in that sense. So you see we're purifying this crystal, and what that's going to do is unlock a red crystal level, which is just strictly a platformer, no materials or anything. Not required except for this next one. Right here we're just going, they're just explaining the building aspect to you. So rescuing villagers does take up some amount of time, so it's important to try to conserve the amount of attempts that you go there for. Just to be as quick as possible. We actually mash space button in the case of PC as soon as we enter a level because it skips a cinematic. That's the first use of a switch. Those are pretty self-explanatory. You just ground pound on them to get them. I think that's just about the only use of the ground pound in the run. So we have to collect the same amount of red crystals listed on the screen. Nothing too crazy there. While not dying, or we get sent back to the beginning of these levels specifically. And so on the top left of the screen you'll see Ginger's icon in leaves. That represents our health. If we go below 4, then we die and have to respawn. We're gonna stop off and build a house really quickly. Oftentimes, so this is actually, the first few levels are really the only time that we actually are shown where to go or suggested where to go. Most of the time it's pretty freeform, believe it or not. So you see those stumps that aren't, like, they don't have a glow around them, that means that you can't actually get anything from them, but if they are glowing and have some particles, then you can grab some wood from them, which is very useful throughout the run. So the second level here actually has the first real trick of the run. It's a few minutes into the run, but it's pretty flat. It's pretty cool. So here we're gonna actually grab a material that you didn't get to see. These enemies are giving me a hard time, so I'm just gonna ignore them. We're gonna go over here just to grab a checkpoint for later. For reasons. Also get these materials. So here's a trick. So you can climb up collision that you shouldn't be able to climb up. Because for some reason the developers left collision there. So having a good memory is pretty key in this, because forgetting your melody wastes a lot of time. So here we're gonna death warp as soon as we get this. But that's not actually the reason why we grabbed this specific checkpoint. It's quicker for later. So we have to get that red potion to lower these vines. We want to be careful not to grab the checkpoint while also grabbing the gem. If we do, it's not a huge deal. If we don't, it saves a good amount of time. Here I want to make sure I'm in Ginger's base outfit as often as possible when I don't need to use the other ones, because it's required to purify the red gems at the end of levels. Now here's the trick. What we do is we unlock this, and then within a quick frame window we respawn. What that does is puts us in a respawning animation, and then we do it one more time. What that does is it opens up the T-Rex, which is the end of the level, while also sending us to this little area here that allows us to get some gems. But instead of having to press a switch and do a cutscene and do some traveling, what we can do is collect everything that we'd ever want and get sent right to the end of the level. So that's the first real trick in the run. It's not super hard, but it's pretty cool looking. On occasion, you do fail it, but I have a pretty good setup for it. The next level actually has one of the biggest skips in the game. What we do is we collect our second partner slash outfit, whatever you want to consider it, and that lets us turn into a mouse, which is required for the run. And we do that because, well, it's required, but we could actually skip the entirety of the level if we really wanted to. So there you see the percent counter again. The only number that really matters is 70. There are some other benchmarks between levels that you can also get. But generally, we don't have to worry about those. The closer to exactly 70% you can get, the better. Usually it winds up between 70 and 72, which is fine. Anything more than that and I'm doing something wrong. So again, I'm going to be taking advantage of the checkpoint system. So the reason I talk to him is so I can unlock the lift. So normally, if I was doing an actual run, I'd go a bit riskier, but I'm gonna grab this checkpoint just because, well, in case I die like that. But it's just like 10 seconds or so safer if I do happen to die anywhere else throughout this next segment, which is very possible. I could be doubly safe and grab this checkpoint down here, but I don't like doing that. So here we're just grabbing the gems. Oh my gosh, that was such a good save. So we're just grabbing some gems around here. Grabbing these gems, we're gonna do a blind jump onto here so we can hit this switch. Which is actually a pretty scary looking jump, but you always make it as long as you time out your jump right. And then we jump to here. We're gonna try to get a little boost here. We got it. Now we have to be careful to avoid the pickaxe guys. Now we're gonna take a safer route. Usually we'd go right over the spikes if our health allowed it, but my health isn't allowing it currently. So that's just a risk 3 damage area. I want to get this gold bag here. And this is the reason why we don't skip the level right away, because if we skip him and go too far ahead, then we soft lock the game. And obviously that's not ideal. So now we're gonna death warp back to our checkpoint. So taking damage and dying is quicker than pausing and dying, but pausing and dying is quicker when you don't have damage readily available to you. So that's always something we kind of try to keep in mind here. So what we're doing is we're gonna go on top of this elevator, or lift, get a little bit up here. See, they actually want you to come up here to collect things, but what they didn't know is that you can do this and go up out of bounds, walk straight across this platform, and drop down to the crystal at the end of the level. So that saves a large chunk of time. This is one of the longest levels in the game, so it's super helpful that we did what we did. So this is actually one of the cutscenes where I do have control of Ginger, so I'm going to try to position myself to get into the red crystal earlier. But unfortunately, I did miss a little bit, but I did get to collect the wood early, so I guess that's not too bad. Here, this level isn't at all required, but it has a lot of gems, which makes up for us skipping a few levels. So we go through this level twice, and that gets us to an acceptable count of gems, generally speaking. If not, it just means we collect some more throughout the run. Also, another nice thing about this is it only has 3 gems you have to collect, so you could be pretty liberal with the route you take, which is always really nice. I actually just went the wrong way though. I was kind of in autopilot mode there. Not a big deal. So these platforms are actually pretty glitchy. Like you can just go straight through the middle of them and die, so you have to be careful how you space out your jumps. but the platforms do giveth and they do taketh. They can save your life or they can kill you. But if we play correctly, they won't do either. So I think I started with this with like around 40 gems, and as you can see, I'm already well over 100. So you see why this is kind of nice to get. I went a little bit risky on that jump, and I missed it. It's not a big deal. It certainly happens to the best of us. So now you get to kind of see what the level looks like if I wasn't focusing primarily on gems. There we go. And we're right back where we were. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So I just want to wait for these 2 gems, and then I can jump here. Ideally, we have around like 170 to 200 gems here. Obviously, the more the better. But the thing about this game is the route is you ad-lib the route a lot, depending on what enemies you can kill, what materials you can collect, and how many times you die in a level. So if a gem count isn't concurrent with like what I say I want it to be, it's not a huge deal. Like, there are tons of backup strats and ad-libbing, which makes the game really interesting, in my opinion. Like, knowing what to do in any given situation that comes up is a super useful skill. Because there are times where you'll fill up the gem counter quicker than you think you would in a world, because I think there are 15 inhabitants you rescue, which 15 times 30 is like 450 gems or something like that. So sometimes you get that earlier or later, which means you have to get more materials to build. So playing well while still knowing what to do and going fast is one of the big things in this game, and one of the things that makes it really challenging, as well as some of the boss fights later on. So we're a tad lower than I normally am, but I think I also cashed in my gems a bit early, so we should be fine. I'll just make sure to collect a few extra gems to be safe. So that's it for the grind. That's the only time we do any sort of grinding for gems. It's like a 4-minute segment, it's not really a huge deal. 4 minutes assuming I don't die, of course. But we're assuming I don't die, of course. So stumps can also drop rocks, but that occurs a lot less often. So we want to build this up, build this up. We want to rescue the rest of the inhabitants now. So now there's 1 inhabitant left, which means we net saved 30 gems. And what that means is I have 30 more gems for the next world in the 3rd world. So the rest of what I'm going to be doing in this world is going to be building for my percent counter. So building small buildings is like 3%, rescuing inhabitants is I think between like 3% and 5%. And bigger buildings are more percent counter. So like that's something I keep in mind while doing runs of this game. This level is one of the more interesting ones because rather than talking to the NPC and starting the timer for the maze, I'm actually just going to get out of bounds a bit early, skip over the start timer, and get some gems and the like early. So I have 2 out of 5 honeycombs right now, which is what I'm collecting. Okay, so I messed up there. It's not a big deal. I tried to get him to hit me across. I'm going to try it one more time. Okay, I didn't get it. Not really a big deal. Now, I want to just start this now. You can start at any time really, depending on what your goal is. But I should be good starting it like right now. I'm climbing up an invisible wall right here, jumping onto the top of the ceiling, jumping to another one. I actually missed the jump there. What I did wrong there was that I didn't jump far enough outside, and sometimes that happens. Which is why I grabbed this checkpoint instead of the last one, only. It's not really too big of a time loss. Now we're back in bounds, collecting materials. We're using this blimp to get across here. And we just got the last honeycomb. So, the reason I avoid starting the timer right away is because, one, it gives me this ice block, which I could potentially use for building later. And two, it skips a cutscene. And three, it gives me more, what's the word, more wiggle room before messing up. So now we're ready, just about to go to the last area in the world. If the audio is loud enough, you'll have heard Ginger dashing a few times. And that just means I have control of Ginger and I'm moving during that cutscene. So what I want to do right now is grab this and build it up. And then I want to build this as well. And that's going to unlock the last level for me. So now we're just going up this stairwell and getting some building materials along the way. So this level is actually one of the riskier levels in the entire run, because I do a strat where I try to conserve my health so that I get sent back here quicker. So if I die at all, I get sent back to the beginning of the level, and that's not ideal, obviously. Here I'm going to try to take the quick path, and I did. Oh no, I didn't, I died. So what happened is I dipped a little too low there. So next time I'm just going to take the intended route, but that saves some time over taking the blimp over to the other side. So if given the opportunity, I try to take that. Here we're just collecting a few gems. So see, I'm already down to 2 health, so that means I have to be pretty careful. I think since this is a run, well, I think in a marathon run I'd actually take this a bit more safe, because the chances of dying are pretty high. So instead of getting sent back to the beginning of the level, I just get sent back to the checkpoint. Although it means I have to play this a bit slower, it net saves time. As opposed to net losing like 40 seconds. Here we're just avoiding this lever because we skipped the use for it. So this is what the mouse is used for, is going through these little holes. You didn't see it, but I actually just skipped the cutscene there. Because when you press control, you skip cutscenes rather quickly. Oh, cool, I made it. Ah, darn. What I was trying to do there was make a quicker cycle on the blimp where I jump off the blimp, and make it to the end without having to use the blimp another way. But I didn't do that, unfortunately. That's what there's a lot of really risky strats that often don't pay off in this level. So this is sign jump. This skips having to raise the platforms. I'm gonna grab this checkpoint in case I have trouble on the boss here. So this boss is rather simple. What I have to do is I have to jump over this rock 6 times, and then hit the boss. Then I have to avoid flames, hit the boss, and then I have to avoid him jumping on me, and then that's it. This boss is a bit slow, mind you, but it's alright. This is a great time for donations. But since this is just my video, so after the end of each world, you get sent back to the area that we first started in to get a new power-up, and what that does is let you unlock the next world. So in this case, I'll be getting the fire power-up that lets me burn the vines on some gates to get to the next world, which you can actually get behind organically. But there's no loading zone until you beat the final boss in this world. So unfortunately, as of yet, we can't skip all of World 1, which is a shame. So World 2 is a swamp themed level. It's kind of like the area is like a maze to navigate, and there are some risky shortcuts that you can take to save a lot of time and certain side quests you have to do. So if we could get to the switch earlier than now, then in theory you could skip the boss, but I haven't been able to find a way to do it without, or just haven't been able to find a way to do it yet. But what that would skip is the final phase of the boss. So the next world, we're going to be getting several more power-ups. We're going to have the fire-breathing power-up, the magician's power-up, and the bat power-up. And the fire-breathing power-up just melts things / raises pots. The magician power-up lets you levitate things. And the bat power-up lets you fly into sewers and through certain things. Which again are all required for the run at least once, and we can't skip the use for it, unfortunately. So here we're just gonna grab some materials before we head straight into the second world. There we go. Sometimes the stumps are a bit finicky. So, in the beginning of each world, like you saw in the first world, we have to watch these introductory cutscenes, which is both good and bad. I had a really long load there for some reason. I'm not sure what happened. In this world, it's not as simple as unlocking all the levels. We actually have to do 2 different side quests to unlock 2 different levels. One is collecting mushrooms and another is defeating zombie frogs. But in general, this world's one of my 2 favorites. I like the third world the best. I think it looks the coolest and has the funnest levels. The first world is also kind of pretty fun, but it's the most vanilla, just to get people started. So, here in the first level is another skip towards the end of the level. This allows us to skip a fight sequence, which is rather long, and cuts out some backtracking. It's also, you do a lot of your inputs blind because of the camera, which is really cool. So you have to kind of memorize what area you're going. But this is Pet Cemetery Hill, if I remember the name of the level correctly. Yeah. So I actually try to jump a certain way in order to avoid the things that pop out of the ground. This is actually my favorite guitar song in the game, the way it sounds. So you'll see right there, the frog is just floating on some invisible collision. Which is something we could exploit if it was useful, but it's not, sadly. The ceilings are really high in this level for some reason. Otherwise we'd be able to go right over the gate into the end of the level right away. But on the plus side, it lets me collect some more materials, which is always useful. So I'm actually going to take an intentional death here, because if I die later, it's going to transport me back here and I'm going to lose a net of more time. One of, like, I think, in my opinion, one of the things that makes a good player in this game is knowing when you should die intentionally. Because you're like, oh, I don't want to lose 8 seconds, I can try this, but in reality it's more like you're going to be losing like 20 seconds if you aren't smart about when you choose to take a death. So that plant that we just talked to wants apples to unlock the gate, so that's why we're collecting apples. I tried to get a jump where you press that switch early, but sometimes you get damaged. One really nice thing about playing on computer is you have your hotkeys for your outfits, so numbers 1 through 9 are used, and that makes for quicker switches of the outfits. So here we want to go up, and then we want to go down, and then we want to go up. One really challenging thing about this game is that we actually don't have invincibility frames between getting hit. So you can get comboed really quickly and die, which is a big risk factor in this run sometimes, specifically on the last boss, which is why I padded my estimate a little bit more than I normally would. Here we're going to take advantage of a death warp. Got a little bit greedy with my pauses there. So the reason I try to hold this checkpoint the whole time is for this specific reason. So now we can actually go right to the end of the level, but I want to grab a few more gems. Just to be a bit safe here. So we're going to take advantage of some collision on this wall. Then we're going to try to jump out of bounds into this area. And the gem that ends the level is actually right here. I know it's hard to believe, it's just a bit hard to find sometimes. So I want to be right here. There it is. So that's what I mean about blind inputs at the end of this level. So now, for once, I'm actually not going to be purifying any villagers between levels. I'm just going to build up 2 buildings, and that's going to be enough percentage to unlock the second level, which shaves a few seconds off of my travel time. I think about 5 there and 5 back it saves. So this log is kind of like important for this level. So we're gonna grab this material for building purposes. So by reviving these 2 things, we get houses, I guess. That's Violet's house and Blueberry's house. That gives us 11%, and we need 10, I believe, to unlock the next level. So now we can just go straight back here, as opposed to going to the very center of the area. We're going to be grabbing a few materials along the way, namely rocks. In this level we're generally short on rocks. In the third world we're generally short on sticks. So that's something I always try to keep in mind. So, a bit of forewarning. This level has the most difficult minigame in the history of any video game ever. The speed at which these coffins goes is utterly ridiculous. Yeah. So I have to sit through this for I think 7 rotations of the coffins. And then it's extremely hard to keep track of where to go. I'll probably need some chat help from during the event for that difficult minigame. And just because it wasn't difficult enough, they decided to ramp up the amount of coffins. So, that's fine, Coffin RNG. If I can get there in one batch, it's like a good distance away. So this level actually has a infinite staircase, like in SM64. I'm not going to be showing it off because it's pretty far out of the way, but the reason we do all of this stuff right here is to bypass the staircase. So here we have an interesting little section where I have to go around and around. There we go. So I missed out on 2 gems there, that's kind of unfortunate. So as far as I can tell, this part of the run is really random as for like what I need to get. I think there are patterns to where I get what I want, but generally what I want is on the top level. I generally want at least 1 stick and golden feather, I believe is what he's looking for. So it should be here if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I guess I got a bad pattern then. I'm actually gonna kill these guys for their gems, because farming these frogs is a pretty easy method of getting things. Yeah. So there's my golden feather. I want to grab these gems. And I could scan these last 5 coffins for another stick, but I don't really think that's worth my time. So I actually just started collecting a new stick in my route, so needing 2 sticks here, per se. There's a ton of backup materials, if you ever need them. So that cutscene just drained the infinite staircase. So if I was to come here early and try to get past it, then I would just be stuck here. I wouldn't be able to progress. And there's no backwards lawn jumping in this game, so unfortunately I am kind of stuck with doing the puzzle for now. This is a little platform section with some falling platforms. Unfortunately, I had to take the death there, which means I lose a crap ton of time. Oh. Well, that's an unpleasant surprise. For some reason, the checkpoint didn't register properly past this manhole, so that's fun. That's fine, though. Just gotta take the next area a bit more carefully and we'll be fine. So those smiley face rocks are rocks that can only be killed with the bomb power-up, which is the very last power-up in the game that you get in the 3rd to last level. But it's required in that level and the 2 after it, unfortunately, so we have to get it. Because the final boss requires you to kill him with bombs. And final boss is an experience, I will say that much. So, not the best level overall, but that's fine. These things happen. So to unlock the next level, on top of getting our gems and whatnot, we have to talk to the lady that you just saw very briefly in the cutscene. Because she can lower the barrier if you give her some mushrooms. I don't know why she needs them. I guess it's to make the spell. Her right there in the mini-map. I actually haven't mentioned the mini-map yet, because I don't ever use it, really. There are like a few rare instances where I'll use it to make sure I'm going in the right area, but other than that I don't use it actively. But it's a good tool for new runners or people who get lost easily. But the more I play this game, obviously, the more I memorize where to go. Here we're just making a side track for some sticks for later. We're gonna talk to this fine woman over here. So the red markers on the mini-map indicate to me where the mushrooms are, or to someone who doesn't know where they are for the first time. So, actually, I'm gonna go over here. Usually I wouldn't do this in a run, but this is just a little safety strategy. So the reason this is a safety strategy is because if I die, I just get spawned a little bit closer to where I was. But I'm not really scared of dying, it just happens on occasion. Since we're not all TASes, unfortunately. So ground pounding is actually a counterintuitive mechanic because it slows you down most of the time rather than helps you. So I died there, so it's a good thing I grabbed the checkpoint. So there you go, coming in handy right away. Otherwise we'd be spawned all the way back at the mushroom lady. So it was a good second thought for me to grab that, I suppose. So yeah, that's all I'm doing right there is grabbing the wall so I can ensure my jump length. Now what we're going to be doing is going to the center area. And doing some building and doing some regenerating. We only restore the one on the right here because we don't have enough gold for the next area, unfortunately. So that's a big bummer. Now we're gonna go this way and do some extracurricular building. So next up is a big maze that has a lot of gems and materials in it. This is actually one of the levels, in theory, that you could skip the entirety of, but just hasn't been found yet. And there's also, we also get the last power-up of the world that we need in here. So it's not also super useful. Actually no, it would still be useful to skip the level, but you would just have to get the power-up first. Here I'm getting this rock. So generally, I get these materials in a certain order, but in the end, as long as you do what you need to do, it doesn't matter what order you do it in. So there's a stick just beyond our view, and I was considering getting it, but I don't think I'll need it. So depending on your gem shape and your percentage shape and whatnot, this is actually one of the levels where you can go really safe or really risky with your gem count. But I've went too risky before and have lost runs. So rare death there. That's not the biggest deal in the world, but we do start back at the beginning here. It doesn't send us very far back at all though. It's like 10 dashes. Not the biggest deal in the world. Here we're just grabbing this checkpoint for later purposes. We actually want to try to keep that checkpoint throughout this whole level. So yeah, in theory, we could get this guy and go straight to the end of the level, but then we'd lose out on a bunch of materials, and that's not always a good thing. We'd have to supplement it with some more materials and gems. Which is why we do the gem grind in World 1 to begin with, is because we skip a few levels and are short on gems that we normally want. So that's what the bat power-up does, it turns us into a batty boy. So there I get to take damage and die because I was low on health. So now we have to put this to 9 o'clock in order to unlock the next area. We're skipping a cutscene here. So the mouse actually comes in handy in this level quite a bit, because that's how we get materials. And you would think, oh, you can just go straight out of bounds, but there's an invisible ceiling that I'm pretty sure they just stretched across the whole entire maze. That has very, very few holes in it. So I avoided the checkpoint there, so I'll be in pretty good shape. Which is nice. Because getting that checkpoint checkpoint loses me some time that I would otherwise save, but it also allows me to get some extra gems if I feel like I need them, so it's like a double-edged sword. But most of the time, it's better not to get the checkpoint than it is to get it. So now we can just warp straight back to where the clock is. We have to set it to 12:30. Do some gem collecting. As you can see, we just can't jump straight over that. Unfortunately, much to my dismay. I'm sure I will figure out, or someone will figure out a way eventually to skip it though. So I get this gold for one specific reason, and it's for a building in World 3. And there you go, that's the level. Next up we have the shortest level in the game. We literally go in, go up some stairs, get some gems, and jump over a wall, and that's the level, so... Whoops. So in the next world, there's actually another side quest that we have to do to unlock the very last level in the game, but if we could skip that, it would save a decent amount of time. But it just requires jumping somewhere that I just can't jump quite yet. So here, while I'm like kinda ahead of things, I'm doing some building to try to get to 70 as quick as possible. And that... Oh wait, I'm actually short one rock. I forgot. So, well, I wouldn't say I forgot, I'd just say sometimes you have enough and sometimes you don't. In that case, I didn't. Which isn't a huge deal at all. Sometimes I can build on the way back and sometimes I can't. So, this skip aptly is called hide and seek skip because you have to seek out a bunch of jack-o'-lanterns and then you have to play hide and seek with the main butler guy over here. But instead of doing that, we just get the gems that are readily available to us. And we're about to go over this double door. And that's the level. So we do not get to see who would win, whether it be one gingery boy or one butlery boy. So that next building in theory should put me right over 70%. But if not, I have plenty of gems to spare. I would just like to save them, if possible. I want to grab a stick here, which is why I turned myself around. These frogs are getting a bit overzealous. So, the second world and the first world's boss fights are pretty underwhelming, but the third world more than makes up for it. Which I'll get into later as that becomes relevant. We're gonna take a little shortcut here. And talk to him, because talking to him lets us unlock this area the final area in this game. Without his assistance, we wouldn't be able to access level 5 of World 2. Here we're just fighting some frogs, which is 32 frogs to be specific. And that's good because more gems the better, obviously. The more gems there are, the safer the run is. So I actually want to fight these frogs in a somewhat specific order. I want to kill the frogs to the right of me last so I can collect their gems as well. Because as soon as you get the 34th frog, or 32nd frog rather, you get teleported. And that loses you out on 8 free gems, so... And I missed one somewhere, so it didn't even matter. Okay, I know what happened. So sometimes the frogs spawn like way far out from where they should. And like, you don't realize it because you're like, oh, I just killed like 20 frogs, I'm sure I'm fine. But in this case, I wasn't fine. Oops, other way. For some reason, you don't get pointed in the direction of the last world after that, which is kind of a... or level, rather, which is a small complaint of mine. So I always get turned around there. This next level is unfortunately skip and trick free, which I know is not the norm in this area, but there is one death warp which saves some time and some health. So here I'm just getting some extra gems for World 3. So I want to grab this checkpoint because I'm going to death warp it to it twice. Can I get behind here now? There's not really much to say during this level. I'm just collecting gems and getting to the end. I have to hit a switch to trigger something, to trigger a painting falling, which is this switch. And then right after I get this gold bag, I death warp to the checkpoint I intentionally got. Use my bat power up here. That's the only reason it's required in this level. Use it one more time to mitigate some traveling and the time it takes to use your power. So, right as soon as I get to the end segment of the level, there's going to be 3 levels that I have to climb and fight enemies. And you can kill them very quickly. Sometimes they can spawn on you and hurt you, which isn't ideal. So jumping very high up on the Frankensteiners lets you kill them in one hit as opposed to multiple hits. So I strive to do that. And then right after this gauntlet of enemies is the boss for World 2. Well, that's unfortunate. So, we have the boss now. So, I can only take 2 damage here. The way this boss works is he throws stars at you. But as long as in the first phase you keep running, he won't ever hit you. In the second phase, if you dash with good timing, he won't hit you. In the third phase, if you run and dash with good timing, he won't hit you. They try to make things challenging by introducing these jumps, but you never really have to keep going. As long as you know the mechanics of the boss, then you never have to worry about jumping over or going through these things. So this is essentially an auto-scroller at this point, with the chance of dying. So this is another good time for potential donations. Otherwise, I would go into World 3 stuff, which is... So actually one thing about this boss that can help you optimize it is, if you so happen to wind up in the right spot where this spawns, that saves some time. 1, 2... But it's hard to keep yourself orientated sometimes. So as you can see, he has a stronger attack now. But really, I barely need to move in reality. So in World 3, the first level, there's actually a really cool out-of-bounds sequence that lets you get to the very end of the level, but invisible walls prevent you from getting to the very end. I'm hoping to bypass that one day, because that would be like a 4-minute time save. Although then I'd have to find a way to substitute the materials and gems you get in that level, which can also be a bit difficult. There's also another big theoretical skip in World 3 that would let you skip an 8-minute level that doesn't give you nearly as many gems for your time. Alright, I got a little bit ahead of myself there. So this boss has one more phase and then he's done for. And we're into World 3. The hardest skip of the run is also in World 3, as well as the hardest 2 boss fights. But they're all some of the most fun levels in the game, and visually impressive. So World 3's gimmick is that you get a pirate costume, the space outfit, and the bomb outfit. And the space outfit lets you shoot stars. The pirate outfit lets you open chests, which is required for a side quest. And I think that's actually its only required use throughout this category. And then there's the bomb outfit, which is required for the boss and whatnot. Okay, that's not too bad. So this was a really good boss fight. Normally I have to do a bit more walking around. We get to see this cute cutscene of Ginger. And we see that his hat was holding the gem the whole time. in addition to the pirate side quest, you have to do a side quest with the bomb, actually, to free some citizens. And one of those citizens lets you use a moving platform to get to the very end of the game in the last level. So if you could skip that and the pirate power, that would save a lot of time. And all that's preventing that is one gap. But currently there isn't any tech that lets you get further jumps or anything of the like. So unfortunately we just have to deal with it for now. I'm hoping that that will be the next big breakthrough in this game, because it would make the last world a lot faster, and it would streamline the route a bit more. So this is actually here the whole time, but we need the space power in order to make the ship go blast off. Here we have to watch our Seaside Lake cutscene, or whatever it's called. Bleepside Lake. I just remembered it before the text came up. I like the aesthetic of this world a lot. The seaside, the lantern. Like, I could see myself living here, which is probably why I'm super partial to this world. Like, if I was whatever the heck Ginger's race is, I would be living here. So if we didn't skip this level, if we did skip this level, we would just be grabbing the pirate power-up, in theory of course, assuming we can't skip that as well ever, and going straight to the end of the level, where there's a gem in a chest. So this level takes advantage of death warping several times to cut out some of the extra stuff. I want to be careful not to grab that checkpoint, or I have to change my strategy. So we'd grab him and then go out of bounds and go to the end of the level in theory, which is really cool. But instead we have to do some backtracking and fetching of things, which isn't too bad. Takes a few minutes, but it gets the job done. So once we talk to him and grab this card, we can death warp back to the first checkpoint. Here, it doesn't really matter if we get hit. Death warp as soon as we see that number on the counter, as opposed to the counter where the food is stored. Next up we go off to the right, where it is actually important not to get damaged. And naturally, I get damaged. I really only want to take 1 point of damage here, at the most, so that I can go through these 2 lasers without any trouble. If you take 2 damage, you'll die, And dying obviously isn't optimal. Unless you're warping, then it's optimal. So this area should look familiar. Blech. Kinda messed up there a bit. Okay. We want to grab this checkpoint now. Okay. So, I want to avoid taking damage if possible in these last few jumps, and I did, which is nice. Means I can be a bit less careful than I'd normally be here. I can go a bit faster. I wait for this cutscene to end. I death warp to the newly acquired checkpoint and switch to my pirate costume. Damage doesn't matter here. Not that I took any. So we can actually get directly on top of this area, but you can't drop back down currently. So one minor optimization is switching and jumping as soon as possible to grab the crystal as soon as possible. So here we want to grab this material while we're in the cutscene. But I seem to have missed it. Unfortunately, I just went a little too far there, got a little overzealous, which isn't a huge deal, but obviously the quicker you can grab something, the better. Now we want to take advantage of the sticky physics in this game. And now this is why we got the gold all the way back in World 2. We get us a nice 7% here. We are out of rocks, so that's all the building we're going to be doing for now. So I want to mash that as quickly as possible to reduce my number of trips I have to take. But unfortunately I didn't quite get all my gems out of the way there. But I'll be going at least one other time, so it's fine. Now we climb back up from once we came. Going full circle. This trick is kind of jumpy. This jump is kind of tricky because of the camera there, but as long as you know where you're going, it's fine. So this level has the hardest trick in the game. If I get it within 2 tries, I'm generally pretty happy. 3 isn't optimal, but it's fine. Anything more than that, and I'm pretty upset. First try is ideal though, and I've done it plenty of times. But if you make a very small mistake, then you'll die. So here we're saving the quote-unquote cows from the UFO. I got bad positioning on that first cow. Actually, the reason we even do this is because there's an invisible barrier blocking our progress. And if we don't do this, we don't learn the alien language by having alien honey. And what that means for us is that we can't progress in this case. One more to go. I'm assuming it's going to go to the far down right one, so I'm going to try to go out of my way to grab this rock here. We'll see if I'm right, and I was. Given the cows they choose, you can generally tell where the last one will be. So sometimes I get to get that rock, sometimes I don't. Here we're doing the last required song in the game, from what I remember. And it's a long one. I think it's 3142, 3143 or something. Yeah, 3142, 3143. And you get to hear that mystic melody of sorts. Here we're just gonna grab this checkpoint here. That wasn't repetitive at all. I used to climb up this pole, but I found it wastes more time than gems I need. And preserving my gem to time gathering ratio is important. So here we're going to be climbing straight up this wall that has no business being solid. And we're almost to the top now. There it is. One more jump. And as you can see, we're straight out of bounds. Gotta be a bit careful here. Almost died there, actually. So, I got it. Okay, cool. So if I had went just a little bit further down before jumping there, I would have slipped and lost control and died, which meant I would have had to climb that wall over again. But fortunately, that did not happen. And we got the best case scenario for that trick. So the reason that I have to go down at all before I hit the ground is like, oh, why can't you just jump and hit the ground right away? And that's because if I do that, then I'll die because there's a fall timer in this game. But by scaling down the wall, you can trick the timer out. Here I'm going to try to make some headway. Actually, I want to go up this time. So there's a lot of wall scaling in this level, which is really cool, because I love any opportunity to show going off of the collision. So this is just a gathering materials kind of a area. Gotta be careful to negate that fall timer. It's not letting us enter the circus. So in this level, the circus is in town. And we have to save. We have to do 2 mini games and we have to save this guy's kid. But actually directly off to the right is the very end of the level, but there's invisible walls surrounding it everywhere, so currently can't get past that, so can't skip all of this BS, unfortunately. So with that, I'm gonna do this little skip here and fall down. Grab some materials. That's the little kid right there. Get this stick over here. Hey! Oh! Hey, hey, look at me. So that's our Jester's outfit, or a dynamite suit, as the game calls it. So this kid's extra slow, but he can go through any solid object. So that's kind of like the goal. Come on, kid. They also have to defeat these aliens, which makes him want to run away. So I try to go as close to the edges as possible with like sharp angles. And what that will let me do is forego a lot. There we go. We want to grab him and make sure he doesn't run too far away. So here you're just going to see him walk straight through the out of bounds area. Here, come back, come back. It's okay. So micromanaging him and the enemies is pretty annoying sometimes. But that went pretty well, honestly. Come on. It's pretty normal for him to run away from you like 10 times. And we did all of that for 1 coin. We need 2 more of them. So, you might be wondering about my final gem count, and it's actually better than ideal right now. Like, I'd say the lower limit of what I want is 180 coming out of this level, and I'm going to wind up with about 210. So this is the first time you really get to see the shooting star power up in action, other than the very first area of the world. Having a bit of trouble hitting this. Okay. So, now, just hit that. So once we get 1300, we actually do a strat where we just take a death. And for some reason, that just lets us progress. So now we want to wait for this guy. And if we play our cards right, we should be able to do this in 3 cycles instead of 4, which is very optimal but pretty rare. Come on. 1050. Okay, so it didn't let us do it that time, unfortunately. I think I've gotten 3 cycles like literally once, so it's not too surprising. But that's not really a big deal. So after this, we're doing a memory matching game. Which requires the Jester's outfit. So let's see how bad my memory is. I think it was up left. We wanted to avoid. I will say my memory has been getting better with this, but other than that, my memory is god-awful. What you're probably about to see. Because I don't remember where any of these are, I'm just guessing at this point. Doo-doo. Okay. Did it perfectly, even though I forgot where 6 of them were. That's always a good thing. Getting the bombs to stand still is a pretty big chore sometimes. But that went very well. I'm very happy with that. So now we can show our face to the big bully blocking us. So now we can grab this, and now we only have 2 levels left in the run, both of which are boss fights. So unfortunately our time is coming to a close. But not before two of the most fun levels in the game. And we're actually going to be starting both side quests now. Which is good. I think there's a woody boy. We want to get this woody boy over here. Talk to the mayor of the town. That triggers our quest. We're going to do some building. We're going to be doing some saving. So now our gem count is completely irrelevant for the rest of the run. So we have to get these chests that are scattered throughout the level. And we have to destroy some certain bombs. This being one of them. Cool. We have to save the citizens of Townsville, so to speak. I think I'm actually a bit lower on building materials than I'd like to be. Let me just double check. Oh no, okay. Cool. And then we're going to use this area one more time. Sometimes you fall down there. Sometimes you are fine. That awkward jump. That went very well. We just need 2 more chests now. Okay. So it just meant I was a bit too high up. So we're just gonna fall down here a little bit. Grab this stick. And we're on to the second to last level. And on to the second to last chest, as it may be. Only 1 more chest now. So this is my favorite level in the game, because I really like the concept of it. The level's literally just a platformer and a boss fight in one. So what we do is a bunch of platforming, and then we get up to the top, and we have to fight the final boss. Unfortunately, this bountiful, what's it called? This bountiful haul of gems does not help you at all in this category, but it would help you in like max percent, and that's really it. Or I guess some meme category where you max out the gem counter, which I would assume caps out at 999, but it could cap out at 900 or 9,999. So, normally I'd be a bit more courageous with my jumps, but I'm just trying to conserve. Because oftentimes dying is a lot more profitable than the risks that you take. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is that I really like the mechanic where you run around to lower things and where you shake the mouse to move things. I think that's a really neat mechanic. So now we have to kill some minions to unlock the platforms. Not really a huge deal. and the platforming gets slightly harder, and the minions get slightly harder next time. But I saved myself there. I knew I wasn't going to make it, so I tried to change my mind, and usually that does not work out as well as it did there. Oh, so I took things a little bit risky there, and it paid off. It's always nice to see that. This is a bit trippy, but you're always safe as long as you know what you're doing. So that foam finger over there is a collectible, and those would be things we'd be collecting for max %, but we don't need any of them for any % unless something goes really poorly. Okay. Okay, that worked. I got really lucky there. I thought I was gonna have to place another bomb. So, by harder enemies, I mean they're just more spread out. But luckily we can go right behind here, which is not intended. Otherwise we'd have to circle all the way back around here. Oops. There we go. Ah. Sometimes you can make that cycle, sometimes you can't. I went for it, and it didn't pay off. Yeah, no. We're fine with waiting. Not gonna make the same mistake twice, after all. I'm gonna grab this checkpoint just to be safe, although I probably don't need it. Famous last words, I know. I would have made that, but I pulled back just to be safe. We're just gonna wait for this. And that's the end of the boss fight, really. Now here comes the real doozy, is this last level. This boss fight in the last level is absolutely unforgiving. And it has no chill whatsoever. If you get hit off the arena once, that's 1 damage. Then you'll generally get hit 3 other times in a row and have to start the boss fight over again. And since there's no invincibility frames and a lot of the attacks hit multiple times, that's also really brutal. So it's just generally a really awful time. It's super fun and challenging though. You can see Ginger moving during the cutscene there. Here I just want to be a little bit safe and grab this wood. Yeah, I think I need a little bit more wood. And this works in accordance with our route. We're going to glitch the bomb right in this corner so it doesn't move on us. That's not the one we want. We want to restore this. We want to finish off our little side quest. And now we want to see where we stand. So we can get that and do some building, or we can go up there. Let's see our building materials. Okay. So we're going to get this extra stick and finish up our building, Alternatively, we could have went to a shop and spent some of our gems in order to top this off, but this should be enough. Often in this game, like I said, you have more than one option, so sometimes looking at the map is helpful. So this gap right here that I fell, that's embarrassing. The gap right there that I'm trying to bypass would save you having to do the quest. But all in all, if I do everything first try, we have about 12 minutes left in the run. So here's hoping. Because the last stretch of the run is no joke. We start off with this Indiana Jones-esque chase. We have to avoid molten rocks and aliens and falling. And obviously the less damage you take early on, the better. And the depth perception's a bit weird on these platforms. So I took 1 damage there, that's not the end of the world. But there I did a double jump, just in case. I jump on the enemy's head specifically, because he'll shock you a lot of the time if you don't. That's kind of brutal, honestly. I'm gonna wait for these to go away because of that. Gonna wait again. Okay, now that we're clear of that, I should mostly be fine. Again, just jump on these dudes' heads for safety reasons. And there we go, first try, very nice. Since I'm on 2 health here, I'm actually going to intentionally take a death right before the final boss. So we want blue. I said we want blue. And we want red to make purple. So this last puzzle is cool. It's a color puzzle, which you don't see very often in games, at least that I've played. So I really enjoy this puzzle. It makes you gotta know your primary and secondary colors. That's a bit unfortunate. Where am I gonna spawn? So it damaged me because I put in the wrong color, quote unquote. But I accidentally just pressed F at the wrong time. There we go. Now we need white, which is just a combination of all 3 of these guys. It really doesn't matter where I take the death, though, as long as I take it. Because you definitely need all of your health for this final boss. So the way this boss works is I have to avoid his attacks, and I have to avoid enemies that shoot projectiles at me, while there's a decreasing number of platforms. All in all, I'd say you have to avoid 30 attacks and only get hit 3 times during that span of time. So, it's pretty hard. The way the boss works is after I think 4 cycles, he turns gold and you have to hit him with your shooting stars. Okay. So, I didn't get the good attack there, which would have been rockets. I got the laser, which means I have to run constantly to avoid it. Otherwise, I take like 3 damage. So, between avoiding the laser and all these enemies, like 12 times, it's really hard not to take damage. Or if you're doing really well, it's easy to kind of collapse quickly. But If you get the rocket, that's good, because it's generally a lot easier to avoid. Other than that, that's pretty much the fight. So we got the laser that time. You can actually tell by an audio cue which one you're gonna get. Like, it makes a bit more of a mechanical noise if you get the rockets. Also, these guys can shoot their blaster post-mortem, so if you're not careful, you can get really screwed over really fast. So now I should be able to hit him, so I'm going to pre-fire some of these and switch to my Jester's outfit. So as you saw, the platform that was on fell. So, all in all, things are going really well. 3 hits in the next 2 phases is pretty reasonable. It just depends on how badly I get comboed, honestly. That's rockets, which is nice because I had to fire at an enemy. And also when he rockets, he generally kills an enemy, which is also super helpful. So all in all, you just hope for rockets every single time. Laser. Ah, I took damage there. I miscalculated his movement of the laser, unfortunately. So, only 2 more hits, which is fine. I'm doing well. Okay, thank you for that. I needed a break from the laser. Also, sometimes enemies will spawn right where the pad is that you have to damage the fish on, which makes it extra problematic. Like that, for example. Oh wait, that was just the laser. I miscounted my phases. See, this is where things get hard. But I maneuvered that masterfully. Fortunately. Also, if you're too slow, you'll get shocked and take a damage on the hit phase. But we're in very good shape right now. Whew. My heart rate always gets going during the last phase of this fight. Okay, rockets. So if you happen to not be fortunate enough to be able to get to a platform where you don't take damage, you can actually just jump while the rockets go down and not take damage. Which is also why it's really nice. Another rocket phase. So, there we go. Nice, nice. Only 2 more phases to go, and I have 2 damage to take, so that bodes well for me. We're getting a laser this time, though, unfortunately. Only 1 more phase to go, by my count, and we should be good. So overall, I had an astounding World 3. Another rocket phase. So I could take damage here if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. Because I'd just rather not. Okay, that's gonna be it for the fight. That went perfectly. Well, 1 damage short of perfectly, technically. Here, I have to be careful not to press anything or I can walk off a ledge and I'm pretty sure that it makes me start the fight over again. I've never actually tested it. So that's the final boss. And now there's only like minute left of gameplay in the run. I could have decided to end timing there when I first did this run, but it feels more appropriate to end it a bit later since there's meaningful movement left in the run. And one more power-up, which only gets one use. So, we purify one last crystal. And now there's one last stretch of sprinting. And once we purify this boy over here, that'll be the run. So thank you for watching if you made it this far. And time. That's the run. That's Ginger Beyond the Crystal.